Hi everybody, this is Tor Storley and I am back with yet another video looking into GPT-3's APIs. In this video, I thought it would be fun to take a look at a speech-to-text API that Openai has set forth. It is called Whisper. And I thought it would be fun to see if you can extract text out of a video. So what I have done is I have created a couple of Colab notebooks that I will be making available after this video and put out on my GitHub repository. But I basically set up a couple of notebooks, and I had to use two because when you use Colab, you might have to set up a runtime. And if you set up a runtime, you got to choose between, as long as you don't use TensorFlow or PyTorch and AI libraries like that, you have to set up your runtime. And because I use CPU for some of the work and GPU for the rest, I had to set up two notebooks. So in part one, what we're going to look at is we're going to download a video from YouTube into a Colab. Actually, we're going to download it and we're going to transfer it into a Google Drive. And then once that is done, in part two, we're going to be importing that file again, and we're going to run it through Whisper and extract the text from that video. And then finally, we're going to run a GPT-3 summarization algorithm over that and see if we can summarize the content of that text that was generated from the YouTube video. So I think it'll be interesting to take a look at, and hopefully you can come up with some different case scenarios for your use. But I thought I'll share this with you since I was looking into it already. So let's get started. I have a speech-to-text part 1 notebook here. I got a speech-to-text part 2 notebook here. I also am going to be using a library called PyTube. If you want to see a little more detail about how to use PyTube, you could check out my video where I go through some of the downloads and so forth for YouTube videos or YouTube playlists and so forth. So check that video out. You can see it here. This is the address, or you can just go to my video channel and find it that way. Also, I will have a notebook here. You can go and get a GitHub down here. You can see on the scripts here. You can click there and go and get some more information. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use this video, which is a shorter video. It doesn't have quite the length of some of my other videos. So this will be a quicker examples to show. So I'm going to grab this one, and then we'll do a slightly larger video like this one here. You can see this one is a little longer. It almost like 10 minutes or so. So I thought that would be a way of showing off the different downloads. And I'll show a couple of small tweaks you can do to make this happen a little faster. All right, so the last thing I want to show you is Openai, the Whisper model or library, if you will. You can go to, it's open source. You can go out to GitHub. You can see it here. It's github.com, Openai, Whisper. And under here, there is the code. A little bit more interesting is that they demonstrate how they created this model. And if you are technical inclined, you can see here they read in text like an audio or somebody speaks it in. I don't know how they did this. And then it translates it here. So you have here any English speech translation. And then they have non-English, you can see here. So they've been training this for 680,000 hours, it looks like here. So they must have used a lot of parallel processing. And it looks like they use something called a long-mel spectrogram, almost like an image that they use as an input to this model. What is important for us right now is not necessarily creating this model on our own, which you don't have the data for anyway, but it's more how we're going to set it up. So if you look down here, there's a setup section here. They tell us that they use the Python 3.9.9 and PyTorch 1.10 to train and test these models. And I also use Hugging Face transformers. There's also something called FFmpeg Python that they used for the reading audio files. What we want to do is we want to follow this, and what I do is I use this Python dependencies here. So I say install git plus this link address to the GitHub repository. And then there's also a script here how to install the FFmpeg libraries. So that's what we're going to be doing first. And you can look at this, you can read about this a little bit more, gives you a little better information. Another thing that is important is which size model are we going to use to do this work? Well, there is always a trade-off because the bigger these models get, the slower it will run, and but the more accurate they will be. So you should maybe look for a medium kind of thing or test these out. I decided to go with this medium because that's close to the large one, and and let's see how that behaves. And they explain the English version has a .en. So as you can see here, they have this chart where they demonstrate how accurate these larger models are. And as you can see, the smaller number, the better. Spanish is ranking right up on top, and English is doing really well too. So since we're focusing on English, that looks promising. So I'm going to go with this medium model. Now, if you're getting to some of these languages that are towards the end here, you might have to try the best models. I don't know. But I leave that up to you. So anyways, you can see it here. There's some more information here. They also show you Python implementation. So you can see here how they set it up. All right, but there's many ways of doing this. So and also if you need help, you can just do this whisper -- help to get help. So let's go back to my notebook now that we have seen what Whisper looked like. So I'm going to start here with my first notebook. And the thing you want to be aware of here is the reason I did 2 notebooks is because I'm trying to use the CPU for any task that is not related to these models. So if you look at this runtime here inside my Colab environment, and you go to change runtime, you can see it sits at none. None means it's going to run on a CPU. So that's what I want here when I work with these files. First thing I want to do, like you saw from that GitHub repository, I want to install Whisper. The command, if you remember, was pip install, this one. So let's do that first. Let me run that. And it's going to load all these libraries from the GitHub repository, everything it needs, all the Python bindings. So now it's done. Then what I also want to use is this PyTube library that's going to work with YouTube videos. So let me run that, and it's done. Here I'm setting up a URL to my first video, which is the smaller one, this one here. So I'm going to run that first. And then I'm just creating a file path called YouTube. And I'm setting up a variable called YouTube that's going to basically take the YouTube library import here. And it's going to take that object and pass in this video file into it and generate this YouTube object. And then what I want to do is, based on this object, I want to see the streams, because what I'm interested in to see is the video, how many resolutions can you use this for? Obviously, the lower resolution, the poorer quality. But one thing I want a very low quality because I'm not going to watch the video. I just want to extract the audio out of the video. So the lower resolution I go with, the quicker this will download. So that's why I want to see, first of all, how many resolutions can I use. So let me run that now, because I'm doing a for loop over each stream in this YouTube objects streams, which is based on this video. Give me the resolutions. All right, so let's try that. So I'm running that. And as you can see, it came back with a bunch of stuff here. 144, 360. I think I'm just going to go with a 360. I think it's such a small video. It will probably run pretty quick. All right, so the next thing now, I get that reference to that YouTube object here with that right URL in it, with the right video in it. So I'm going to take that, I'm going to take the stream, I'm going to filter the stream by the 360, and then I'm going to just use the first object that comes back and download this file path, which is the YouTube. It's going to be a YouTube file path here. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it into that file path, and if it exists, then it would basically just skip it. So let me see if it already, okay, I got some stuff here. I want to get rid of this stuff. Okay, so I removed those files and I removed the YouTube folder because I tried it out earlier and that's why it was sitting there. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to actually repeat the steps here for, not for the streams because I know those, but here to download a stream itself. So I'm going to filter it by a resolution of 360p. You can see it up here. Take the first one I get, download it into this file path. So it will generate this YouTube folder in my runtime here. And if it exists already, it will skip it. But we know it doesn't exist because I removed it. So let me run this and see what happens. So it did this, and you can see here is the name of the MP4 file that came back. And I'm going to refresh this now. And here you can see there's a YouTube folder created. And here is that file. And it's 3.76 megabytes large here, it says. What I want to do now is I want to basically take that file and I want to move it over to my Google Drive, because right now it sits in this runtime environment, and as soon as I kill this session here, that will disappear, all of this stuff. So let me mount my Google Drive, and then you do that from Google Colab, import drive, drive mount, and then your path to your drive. And you can see it here, it was already mounted, but okay. The next thing is to create a new folder on your Google Drive. The code I'm running here, an interesting point, instead of me trying to figure this out and go to Stack Overflow, I just did what any developer should do these days. You should go and try to have some help. So I went to my good friend ChatGPT, this one. Let me see if I have it available. And up here, you can see download file to drive. How can I download a file from an URL into Colab and save it into my Google Drive using Python code? So ChatGPT ran it and says you can download a file from a URL into Colab and save it into your Google Drive using the Python code shown below. And sure enough, it gave me code written out, and then I just had to tweak it and fix it. And it explains what it's doing, which is kind of great. Obviously, you need to understand this, so you can double check and make sure that is actually what it's going to do. And then I said, okay, how can I make a new directory in Google Drive and copy a file over from my runtime generated files in a notebook? So I basically continue here to try to figure it out. So here's the mounting code. And down here, it creates a new directory in a drive. So here's some code for that. And here is where it copies it. So I was able to basically click copy here and stick it right into my notebook here. And as you can see, you just go and make some minor tweaks and add some parameters, whatever you need to do. And here's your code. So here's the mounting of the Colab code you saw in ChatGPT. So yeah, use ChatGPT and as a starting point, and then you can take it from there. So you don't have to write so much, save yourself some time. So anyways, that's what I did, and it was pretty decent code too. It seemed to work, and then I was just adding a few tweaks to it. But here is the create a new folder on your Google Drive. And another nice thing is it says, hey, if it doesn't exist, then make it. Otherwise, it won't do anything. So that's always a good check. I've got my drive over here, and there's no YouTube. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this code. And it finished, and it tells me where it put this stuff. So let me go back to my drive. Let's refresh it and see if anything new shows up. And sure enough, there's my YouTube folder now. So let me open that up, and that's empty. I'm sorry, yeah, my YouTube on Google Drive, I should say. And then it says, copy the runtime downloaded video, which is this, into the Google Drive to preserve it, because it disappears from here, but it will be permanently saved on a Google Drive until I run out of money or something like that. So here you can see I'm setting up the runtime file. that sits in my YouTube folder. And here's the new path that I'm going to use, this dir path, which is this stuff, which is the folder I'm on the Google Drive, I'm sorry. So I'm just going to go ahead and run this. I'm just going to copy it over. Oops, I got an error here. Let me see what I did wrong. Okay, it looks like I downloaded using an MP4 instead of these 3GPP. So let me change that, MP4, and let's run it again and see if it works this time. All right, so there you can see it. It copied it over. Let's double check. So here we are in Google Drive, and there's a little delay typically. Let me try to refresh and see if it helps. There it is. So now it copied it over here. So now we got the file there. All right, the second thing I want to do is I just want to repeat this very quickly and run it again for that bigger file, this one here, which is a little longer. So let's do that while we're here. Okay, so I set up that other path now, the other video address, which is this one up here, as you can see. Let's run this one now. This one also has a 360, as you can see. Let's go with that 360 and set it up here, and let me run that. This might take a little longer because it's a bigger file, but it looks like it did fairly quick. Okay, we already mounted the drive, so we shouldn't have to do that. We don't have to create a new folder. We have that already on Google Drive. The only thing I need to do is copy this file over. So let me try to run that and see what happens. It looks like it finished. And let's refresh. Oh, it came back just as I was saying that. So here you can see, here is this new file of ours. So one thing we can do, we can download this file. So here you can see it. Then we can go in to Properties, go to Details, and here you can see the frame width and the frame height, 360. So yeah, it looks good. So we downloaded a lower frame rate. So that's what we kind of wanted, because that makes it much faster to download, because we don't care about the quality of the video. So at this point, I have both the files I need, and I'm getting ready now to run the second part of this. Okay, so here's the second part. And what I want to make sure now, because everything we did before we ran in a CPU, but I want to run this in a GPU. So I'm going to make sure that it sits at the GPU, and it does. Again, none means CPU. And then there's also called Tensor Processing Unit, which is a Google fast processing method. But with their own boards. But we're going to use the GPU. So that's what we leave it at. So the first thing we need to do is install the Whisper from the GitHub. So once that's done, we're going to install this FFmpeg library. So let's run that. I assume this FFmpeg library is generating those images out of that sound. That's what I'm thinking. I'm not sure. You can look at the GitHub repository for OpenAI's Whisper to see how that FFmpeg fits into the whole thing. As you can see, it loads a bunch of stuff here. So let's get rid of it so we have to look at all of it. Now what I want to do is I want to install the OpenAI library. Okay, so it's running that. It's finished. And then I want to import the OpenAI library. Okay, so I want to mount the Google Drive. So I'll do that here. Let's connect to Google Drive, use my account, go down, allow it. And the next thing we want to do then is we want to define the path of the file in the Google Drive and copy it into this runtime. So now we're going to retrieve it from Google Drive and put it in this runtime environment. So we can do the opposite basically. So let's run that. Okay. So here is where it's going to put it. So right now the drive is set up because it was mounted. This is what we're looking at here is the Google Drive. And here is this YouTube folder with those files in it. You can see them right here. Okay, so that's fine. Now what I want to do, I also set up my temp folder path here with a YouTube folder, but it doesn't show up yet because we haven't really done anything. Now I'm going to do that. I'm going to set up that folder onto this runtime environment. So let's run that. And now let's go back and refresh, and here it is. Now you can see the folder. The next thing I want to do is I want to use that ChatGPT code that I queried for, this stuff that I showed you earlier. And I want to basically use that code and run that so I can bring my file in here. Let's run that. And I got an error. So let me try to figure out why I'm getting an error. Okay, it looks like I'm using the wrong extension here. So let's go up and fix that. This should no longer be this. It should be MP4. So let's run it again. And we created the folder. We have to do that again. But let's see if we can copy it over now. Okay, so now it came back, and let's refresh. And there it is. So that one copied over from Google Drive in here. Okay, so let's copy that other file over very quickly. So I'll just toggle these two here. That's all I do. So let's run it. Creates the folder structure and the paths. I don't have to create this again. And I'm just going to run this and copy the second file in there. So let's refresh. And there it is. So now we get both files, so we don't have to deal with that anymore. All right. Now what I want to do, I want to use Whisper. And I want to just run this command here. That will basically take this MP4 file, and it will use this medium English model to do its conversions. Okay, so it finished, as you can see. It ran in about 1 minute, 34 seconds. And here up here you can see some timestamps for wherever the sentences are. Hi everybody, I didn't get my name right, but I didn't expect that because it's not that clever. I got the first part correct, but not the second. And notice how it spools out this stuff, and it has like capital letters where there's a new sentence, like thank you. You can see a capital T, and it's pretty decent. I haven't really listened to the audio yet, but I'm pretty sure it's pretty correct here. And also notice over here, it generated a bunch of files. There's one, it's a JSON file, as you can see here. And I don't think I can fix this, but the JSON file basically has information about the whole thing. You can see there's a compression rate. There is tokens they list, but the index of the tokens, and you can see there's text here. So this is basically the full version of whatever it did that it reads from to generate this output, I assume. Then you have this SRT file. You can see it here. It's like an indexed thing. And then it has TSV file. Not sure what that stands for. It looks like it is a timestamp start and a timestamp end type of thing, meaning when the sentence started and then when the sentence ended, that type of thing. And then there is this actual text file, which is the one we want to use. So here you can see is the actual text of whatever the audio on that video is. And there's final one is called VTT file. And it's just different formats of the same thing. So I'm not quite sure. There might be different uses for this. I'll let you figure out what each of these does and the extension. In any event, that is the text version of that audio file within the video. Okay, so what I want to do now is I want to finalize the setup here. And let me try to close this. So our focus is going to be on this file here, this text file. So in order to get the content of that text file, what I do is I'll use my technique from earlier, and I'm going to basically grab a file I have, which is this key, and put it in here. And then I'm just going to create a function that can read the content of that file that I'm going to pass in, which is this key file here. I'm going to add it as a parameter to this Openai library call. And then here what I'm going to do is I'm going to read my text file, this one here, by using the same technique. So I'm going to pass in the file name. It's going to read it back to me into a variable. So I'm going to run that. And here I create a variable called text to summarize. I'm going to get my YouTube file from here, the content of, not this one, but this one. And then we're going to print it out so we can see what it looks like. And we got an error because I haven't fixed this yet. This is an MP4, not the other version. And here it is. So now we get the text. And what I want to do now is I want to use my GPT-3 models. You might recall that if you watched my GPT-3 videos. I had a couple of them out there already. But I'm going to call the text DaVinci 003 model, which is basically the one that ChatGPT was built from. So I've created a function called call Openai summarization. And I'm going to create some kind of response here, calling the Openai, the completion create method, passing in the model, which is the DaVinci 003. And again, check out my previous videos if you want more detail about this, because I don't want to spend too much time on this right now. Check out those. There's one thing I want to point out, though, is if you go to the platform openai.com examples, and you filter by SUMM, for example, you can see here there is this summarization, and that's the one that I want to use. So when you click on it, you can see TLDR summarization. Here is the text that we're going to be summarizing, and in my case, it was that small file that I loaded. And then you want to add this TL semicolon DR at the end. I don't know why we put this in. It says to the end of the text passage, it shows that the API understands how to perform a number of tasks with no instructions. Okay, so this was kind of, so what I basically do is I take this, I add this to my text, and then I set my model here, the temperature, which is basically how random you want it to be. 1 is the most, 0 is no randomness at all. And then there's some other parameters. So I use these the way they are. And then here is what the code for to call this is. And all I have to do is take that and I put it right in here into this function here. And that's what I'm doing. Then I'm printing out the response. I don't need to see the response. But I'm capturing the text within this JSON file. And I'm just drilling, well, let's print it as a response so you can see what I'm saying. And then I'm going to return the text. So let's run this. And now that function is ready to go. And this is the final thing I'm doing. I'm going to grab my text, call that function, and then print out a bunch of stuff. So let's run that and see what happens. Notice down here, it came back as a JSON response. And that's what you see up here. I say choices, which is this outer key here, 0, which means that first list here. Yeah, 0, and then the text parameter, which is the text key, this one here. So that's the key I'm picking up. So that's what the reference to this does. It picks that up, and then it strips any characters that shouldn't be there. All right, so it grabs that text, this one, and that's the summary of the original text. So this is the original whisper text, and then the summary is down here. So here you can see there's the original whisper text that was the audio from the actual video, and you can see here's the summarization of that text. It looks pretty good to me, actually. It kind of summarizes what the video is going to be demonstrating, and I'm pretty happy with the way this came out. So this Whisper does a really good job. So finally, I just want to run through that last file very quickly, and I'll just show you the end result so you don't have to sit through the whole thing again. So it finished, and as you can see here, it's a little more text here. It came back very quickly, and let me copy that into a notepad so you can read it better. So here is the original text. Hi everybody, welcome back to this new video. Today I thought I'll show you. It's pretty accurate here, actually. You don't see some weird sentences or anything. Let's get started. All right, so it goes through all this, extracted out all the text. It's formatted very nicely. And you can see here is quite a bit of text. And it took about 2.5, 3 minutes for it to create this. So not too bad on a GPU. But down here, I ran it through the DaVinci, the Text DaVinci 003 model. And this is summarized text from all this stuff up here. And it talks about in this video, I showed viewers how to work with stock data in Excel by copying some headers into a blank workbook. I then used the built-in stock functions to import. So yeah, it's a pretty decent summary. So potentially you could use something like that and create the description of your video or something on YouTube if you create one. It's pretty nice functionality. So between these GPT-3 APIs and the models they have, it's pretty impressive what they're done with all this. So I hope you like this video and I look forward to see you very soon.